Namaste, everyone. Welcome to the Charvak podcast. This is your host, Kushal Mehra. Time for a discussion. The American elections have just, I don't know, are they done? Are they not done? They seem to be counting even as we are going to do this discussion right now. So that's a separate issue. But so it's time to analyze the American elections from a Indian perspective. And I have with me Sreemoy Talukdar to discuss the same. Sreemoy, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for inviting me, Kushal. Thank you so much.
So, Sreemoy, this is your first time on the Charvak podcast. So, I'd request you to tell everybody a bit about yourself so that, the listeners and the viewers of the podcast can get an idea about who you are, where you come from.
Okay, so I am a senior editor at First Post. I write on strategic affairs, politics, and a little bit of policy issues as well. I'm a keen tracker of international relations, and that is where my interests lie. And I've been writing a lot. In case you've been a regular visitor to First Post, you'll notice that I've been writing a lot on India-China relationship as well. So I think that what is happening in America holds a lot of importance for us in India as well.
So let us start from here, Sreemoy. So let us break this down into two halves. So the first half, what let's do is we will discuss this as an outsider looking and analyzing what happened in America at an electoral level. And then maybe we can extrapolate it, and then we can discuss the importance of these results from the Indian perspective. So my first question to you would be that, as always, and the same thing happened in 2016, where the polls were saying, "Oh, it's a rout. Trump is going to be walloped. It's a rout. Hillary Clinton, 90% people are saying Hillary Clinton is going to win." It was pretty much the same thing this time. They predicted a rout for Trump. But even if we assume, keeping aside the shenanigans of Trump and him being a sore loser, so my first question to you is, do you think the exit polls got it right even this time? Was this a rout?
No, it was by no stretch of imagination was it a rout. In fact, I'd say that the exit polls got it wrong again, and this won't be the first time the exit polls will get it wrong, because I think there is something fundamentally wrong with the procedure of psephology as is being practiced, and not just in the US. Even in Bihar, the exit polls was terribly wrong. Trump got over 70 million votes, which basically means that among all the eligible voters in America, nearly half of Americans voted for Trump. So in no stretch of imagination was that a rout. And even as we speak, some of these the results are being challenged by the Republicans in courts. So we don't know the result of those challenges yet. For now, we have to go ahead with the assumption that Biden is the president, but he will be the president who will have almost half of America against him. And Trump is not the sort of person who generates a mild interest in you. He's a cult figure. So there will be people who absolutely hate him, and there will be people who will worship whatever he says. So Trump is a rather difficult opponent to have if you are in the president's chair, and he'll be powerful.
And it's fascinating. Like, I don't get it. How can exit polls get it so wrong? I mean, I'm not going to compare them with India, because I don't believe India may exit polls get it so wrong all the time. I know before somebody comes and says, "Oh, look at what happened in Bihar." Look, Dainik Bhaskar did predict a Mahagathbandhan government. Dainik Bhaskar kind of got it right. I'm not going to include the C voter range where 100 to 140. That's not a prediction in my view. So I'm going to leave the C voter out. But in America, the misery of the pollsters is that I think when they call people up and they ask them who are they going to vote for, they basically lie to them with a straight face. So do you think Americans are the best poker players on planet Earth?
Well, there's been a lot of speculation about the shy Trump voter, quote unquote. Many pollsters are saying that this phenomenon of a shy Trump voter is making it difficult for pollsters to come out with any sort of predictions. I don't know. I'm not a psophologist, neither do I. And I do understand that this is not an exact science. So a little bit of margin for error, we should tolerate that. But the way the results have consistently predicted Biden to be ahead by at least 8 or 9 points, sometimes 10 points, the results do not belie that fact. So where is the problem? Many American psephologists right now are writing columns in US media explaining why they went wrong. There was one psephologist, I'm forgetting the name of that person, who got it right in 2016, and he wasn't too wide off the mark. He predicted Trump win this time. He was wrong, but he wasn't too wide of the mark, and he's got a very unconventional method. I'm forgetting
Yeah,
the
I
name of
forgot
that
his name.
gentleman.
I saw him being
Hmm.
interviewed by Ben Shapiro, I think.
Yeah. So basically, he has a different method. What he says is that many of these methods, which the pollsters in the conventional pollsters in US use, those are failed. That model has failed, and it is time for them to change that model, because it's clearly not working, and it really doesn't understand the Trump voter, and why that person is not coming out to say in exit polls that he's supporting Trump is something which they are pouring their minds over. I don't think that they have an answer right now. But what we can guess, in absence of any real clear picture, is that many of the voters do not say the truth, because Trump has been vilified by the left so much that for them to admit that they're going to vote for Trump is for them to sort of take the baggage which has been placed on Trump on their own shoulders, and that we don't want to do as individuals. One of the reasons why people, the tribe culture works in people is that this is a sort of induction. So if Trump is a very vile figure, as has been portrayed by the media all the time, and if I say openly that, look, I back Trump, then in a sense I'm also backing all the stuff which Trump is blamed for, right or wrong. And most people, even though they recognize that Trump has been good for them, for instance, there was a trucker who came on Fox News a couple of days back, and he said that he's going to organize 100,000 truck movement for Trump, truckers for Trump movement, where they will down their tools for one day just to protest the way the elections are handling. So the Fox News anchor wanted to know, why is it that they are backing Trump, and he said that, I, in the last 4 years, my wages have gone up 40%. My family is happy. I do not think that the guy who's coming in his place will be able to give me that sort of a future. So I want him. So people want Trump because of the policies that he had implemented, but they might not be very comfortable in owning up that they want Trump because of the fact that Trump has been vilified. So it is possible that they're misleading the pollsters, and which is why we have a very. But this is my own, assumption. I'm not a psychologist, so I wouldn't really venture more than that.
No, so I was looking at some of the exit poll data, right? They were saying that now, obviously, we'll have to wait for more data to trickle down, and you know how the counting in America is and disgusting. I mean, I was talking to my friends in America. I was like, "Did you see Bihar? How what we did, and how fast and efficient we are?" And that's just the way America is. But so, what was shocking to me was that, okay, I understand the Venezuelans and the Cubans coming out and voting for Trump. They have, a history of coming from communist, leftist, fascist states, and they have that baggage, and they'll vote for him. But the African American vote percentage seems to have gone up, especially
Yeah.
African American men. They have voted for
Right.
Trump.
Right.
Then you have Asians. Definitely, there is an uptick even within our own community, Indians. There is an uptick of people voting for Trump. In fact, in the Indian
Correct.
community, there is a historical, lopsided, one-sided voting for the Democrats for years on years. Like 85-15. I think it's going to come down to 70-30 or 65-35 this time in favor of Democrats. One shocker was the Muslim vote increase for Trump. I mean, that has gone over my head. That has completely gone over my head. And especially Muslim men again have kind of voted for Trump in huge numbers. In huge numbers. I don't know what their thinking is. I would like to know. But where Trump has really lost, basically, it seems is the old school white vote. I
Yeah.
mean, they have just
Absolutely.
simply abandoned him and just gone helter skelter. But if we
Right.
were to look at this kind of exit poll data, and okay, while we take the exit poll data with a grain of salt, but if we assume even a part of it is real, what are the conclusions then?
It's very interesting you asked me this, because I was going through the data. So let me run you through you. Trump's vote percentage has gone up plus 4% with black women, among black men, right? Latinas, Latinos. Among LGBT, Trump has got larger share of non-white votes than any Republican president in the last 60 years. And his vote share has also gone up among the Muslims, right? Now, so and one of the reasons why he probably lost this election is that his vote share has gone down by around 18% among white men. So what are the conclusions that we can draw from this? I think the most important thing for us to understand is that people do not always vote ideology. Uh, Trump has, he has planned and he has implemented a bit of that plan to create 500,000 more jobs for black people. And this is something which the black community understands. It is all right to sort of vilify Trump as the supreme racist that ever existed on this earth, but when policies like that are getting implemented on the ground, people are not morons. They can see and understand for themselves what exactly is happening. So that is one. Second is that the civil unrest which happened in the US around 3-4 months back, or maybe a couple of months back, many shops and commercial establishments which were owned by black people were demolished by the Black Lives format, the BLM movement. And obviously that will have an electoral backlash, and it had. And which is partly one of the reasons why the Muslims have also voted in larger numbers for Trump, because people, at least in America, they care for law and order. And you notice during those times when many of these Democrat run governments were hesitating in deploying the police to control control the rioters on the streets, Trump would come out with these tweets called law and order. He very much knew what was happening.
In full caps.
Yeah, in full caps. You have to give it to Trump. He's not a conventional politician, but he can understand the pulse of the ordinary American much more than the elites can. And which is one of the reasons why he's such a formidable opponent for the Democrats, because he understands instinctively, perhaps, because he's not spent his entire career in politics like Biden has, and which is also perhaps the reason why he understands his impulses. And the irony, the supreme irony, Trump is basically the most, he comes from a background which is anything but ordinary. But then he sort of ran the election campaign in 2016, and also now, even after 4 years at the helm, as someone who champions the cause of ordinary Americans whose voice is despised by the elites who do not understand them or their culture or their concerns.
Yeah. So what do you think? If, let's say, COVID would not have happened, do you think they would have beaten Trump? I doubt it. I think he would have walloped them.
Well, I think there is some very interesting analysis here. If you look at the states which suffered very badly from COVID, the states where the death rates are quite high right now, in fact, in the US, you'll notice that Trump has done exceedingly well in those places, right? I think that it is, to answer your question straightforward, I don't know. But I think that COVID, to a certain extent, has even helped Trump solidify some of the support that he had, because he's taken a stance that he doesn't want a lockdown, and I think that resonated with a lot of people. I think it's too simplistic. I do not know any one reason why Trump lost, but I think that partly one of the things which happened this time was that the Democrats were able to sort of strike some sort of a loose alliance between different factions. You would notice in 2016, the Biden faction almost was working against Hillary Clinton in a way, and it sort of undermined Hillary's support base in a very big way. And after all, Hillary's defeat margin in 2016 to Trump wasn't that much in many places. So I think this time the progressives were on board. They will want their pound of flesh. They already started demanding a lot of things from Biden. But I think that was one important thing which happened this time. And secondly, I think the media, last time the media was took Trump very lightly. It never gave Trump a lot of seriousness. In 2016, it took Trump as a clown who somehow came onto the stage and doesn't know what to do. But in 2020, they ran with story as the Trump as the evil incarnate. And a little bit of I think among the whites, certainly, there has been a formulation of opinion on those lines, which is why I think it has gone against him. But once again, I'm assuming that there has been no fraud in elections in the US. This is something which I cannot say that we should be absolutely, because one thing which the elections in US have taught us is that the election process in India is way above in terms of integrity, in terms of efficiency, than what it is in the US. And I think the process that is there in India, we can trust it with with a lot more degree of confidence than we can trust with what has happened in the US. For me, it seems postal ballots arriving 3-4 days after the elections. I don't know. It seems very fishy to me. Maybe it's legal. I don't know.
Well, Tejasvi Yadav says his sentiments are hurt, Sreemoy. Yeah. So this is the interesting part. So I remember I was on a friend's podcast and we were discussing who can beat Trump a year and a half ago. And he found it very weird when I told him that I think there is only one man who can beat Trump, and that is Joe Biden. I'll give you my analysis. So I told him that Trump is someone, he's like a boxer. He needs a dancing partner, a sparring partner, somebody he can spar with. With Joe Biden, you get the most boring, just it's just boring. And it's very interesting that Joe Biden's from Delaware. I mean, I used to have, my family used to be from Delaware, so I know the state very well. It is typical Joe Biden. Like, Joe Biden is Delaware. It has nothing to do, and it is boring. So he was not basically going to dance the dance with Trump. He was not going to spar with Trump. So Trump is like a hammer looking for a nail, and Joe Biden was not going to be that nail. And I think he was the only guy who could have beaten Trump, and I think he's proven that. So do you think there was any other candidate who could have possibly beaten Trump other than Joe Biden?
I agree with your analysis. In fact, there is a very sound logic behind your analysis, and I'll tell you that logic. See, Trump is, on the one side, Trump is a cult figure who arouses extreme passion in people. And it would have helped Trump if Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders was opposite him. Then he could have gone to the town saying that, look, these are the socialists. They'll come and they'll increase your taxes. They'll defund the police. They'll pack the Supreme Court, all those socialist left loony agendas. And he would have gone to town with that. And Cold War is a couple of decades back, but still people have a memory of what socialism is and what Cold War was. So, but with Biden on board, a guy who's spent his entire career on the Senate and he's so antiseptic. I mean, he's never said anything controversial except perhaps a couple of places. And he doesn't hold a strong opinion. He's malleable. He's likable. So Trump was devoid of that animus, as it were, against whom he would have placed himself and trumped. So it became difficult for him when it was Biden, because Biden, and another thing from the Democrat side, as I told you just now, that Biden being the middle of the road guy, it became easier for the centrist Democrats and the leftist Democrats to rally around him. Had it been a leftist per se, like Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders, many of the centrist Democrats might not have felt too enthused about him. That would have benefited Trump. But since Biden is the sort of guy with whom you cannot disagree with him very vigorously, neither can you agree with him, very passionately. He's the sort of fellow with whom you will have some sort of an agreement always, or maybe disagreement a little bit. So it helped and it was probably the only person who could have beaten Trump. I agree with you there.
Yeah, I totally. I was like, Biden is so Delaware. You can't beat Delaware. You need Delaware. You just need it there. And so it's like, when you live in Delaware, you don't do anything over there. You go to New York, you go to Philadelphia, you go to New Jersey, you go to Baltimore, you go to other cities which are in other states neighboring Delaware. There's nothing to do there. That is what Joe Biden is. He was fit for that state. That's what his personality was. And even in the debates, if you remember the first debate when Trump tried to hammer him, he came off very bad because Biden was just like, oh. That's all he was. He was just there. And then Trump had to change his strategy. The second debate got cancelled, and Trump had to change his strategy in the third debate, where actually Trump did better. But then now let's segue into the meat of the issue for us as Indians living in India. Where do we go from here? So let us assume that Biden is going to be the next president of the United States of America. And my first question then to you would be, is this going to be a Biden presidency? Or, considering the kind of health Joe Biden is in, where we can obviously clearly see signs of early dementia, let's not hide behind anything. And is this going to be a Kamala Harris presidency? Because if it's a Biden presidency, it means completely different things for India. I'm not saying whether they are good per se or bad per se. But if it's a Kamala Harris presidency, you've had Kamala Harris openly, quoting the members of the squad, which is Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and all those people. And Kamala Harris has been very vocal about Kashmir, about CA, NRC. Now, somebody might come back and tell me, but even Biden made that post. But there's a huge difference. That is just the Biden camp putting an article out, but Kamala Harris has gone out of the way to make some of these points. So what are we looking at? So, in your view, first of all, is this a Biden presidency or a Harris presidency? And if either or, which one is better for us?
To unpack the first question, I think that it will be a Biden presidency. I do not see, at least in the first term, I don't think Biden will be a two-term president. I think one term will be enough for him. In the first time, I do not see Biden relinquishing the control of the government to Kamala Harris. Kamala Harris is a very strong personality. She was a prosecutor. That's fine. But then we have to also understand the inner dynamics of the Democrat Party. And the Democrat Party, even though it has taken a turn to the left, it still has a fair number of centrists inside it. And those centrists will feel extremely uncomfortable if Kamala Harris were to call the shots in terms of cabinet formation. But to answer your question, I think we need to wait a little bit more and figure out, and we will get a sort of assumption maybe turned into a sort of conviction the moment we see the cabinet postings. Right now, the cabinet postings haven't yet started. The appointments are at a very preliminary stage. Only Ron Klain has been appointed as the chief of staff, which tells me that it is going to be Biden, because Ron Klain is a guy who is very pally with Biden. He has worked with Biden when he was actually the chief of staff when Biden was the vice president. So with whom Biden has a very good relationship. So with Ron Klain at the White House, and he's the guy who's the key guy who will be making recommendations to the president on the number of appointments that will be made in sensitive, appointments such as Secretary of State, Defense Secretary, and stuff. To me, it seems that it is going to be Biden, but we should not also undermine the pressure the leftist, the progressive faction will have, and they have already started pressurizing Biden. I'm seeing Bernie Sanders. I heard the other day AOC coming out with a statement that Bernie Sanders should get a cabinet post. Elizabeth Warren is also pressurizing Biden. They know very well that this victory over Trump wouldn't have been possible had the socialists not, animated their base. And one of the things about the Democratic Party right now is that the party's youngest wing, the wing which is the most energetic, the activist wing, that is completely leftist. The centrists are the more middle-aged, closer to senile guys who've been Democrats all their entire life. But the young blokes who are fresh coming out of universities and colleges, the blokes who actually drive a party forward, those blokes are leftists. So there's a lot of energy on the leftist corner, and that is why I say that this victory wouldn't have been possible had it not been for that base which was out on the streets with their activism before the elections. So they will seek their pound of flesh. Having said that, I do not see this as a Kamala Harris presidency. Now, to turn to your other question, what will happen? See, I am not very sure on this. I've written a piece a couple of days back where I've mentioned it very clearly that the US-India relationship is at such a stage that it can actually flourish under the Biden-Harris administration, but it will have to be careful in policies. There will be a pressure from the leftists. There will be a pressure from that side. The Biden-Harris administration will have to resist that pressure and understand that India is a sovereign country, and it has taken whatever decision it takes is a decision which is ratified by the people, because it's a democracy. It's not an authoritarian state. So it calls for respect of India. It doesn't. The Biden-Harris administration cannot afford to be condescending towards India. To what degree does that risk lie? What kind of risk does it possess? I think that this answer is still up in the air. If we look at what Kamala Harris has done leading up to the campaign, in the initial stages, she was vocally backing Pramila Jayapal, the US Congresswoman who brought a resolution against India in the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Then she also wanted to be part of a panel in which S. Jaishankar, our External Affairs Minister, was supposed to be present, and he pulled out because the panel refused to admit, refused to accede to the minister's request. And following day, Kamala Harris came out with a tweet saying that she completely backs what Jaipal had said. So these are the things which people won't forget. And Kamala Harris brings with her with this entire thing. India will be suspicious about her. Having said that, I think it is one thing to say all these things when you are not in the government, and quite another when you are part of a government which has a huge degree of strategic convergence with India. And you will know that if you make comments like that, it will not be well received, and it may jeopardize the relationship in a certain way, because Indians are inherently skeptical about the US. Their closeness with the US has been driven in the recent days almost entirely by the expansionism of China, by what it sees as the Chinese threat. Now, India has committed itself to a large extent without being a part of the formal alliance structure. India has still led itself to a very large extent to be a solid member of the US-led security architecture in the Indo-Pacific. However, if India perceives that the new administration which has come here is prone to lecturing it on democracy and on liberalism, I don't think it will be taken very kindly here. And the administration in India right now is not one to wring hands. It will push back, and it will create some sort of a bad blood. So I think the Biden-Harris administration will be calculating all these things before it makes any comment like that. And I would be surprised if it really does anything on those lines.
Yeah, but don't you think historically, if we were to make a historical analysis, there is this trend we always notice that Republican presidents tend to be better for India in a larger sense, or that analysis or that hypothesis is inaccurate.
Yeah, it is said that the the Democrats are the power for the Atlantic, and the Republicans are the power for the Pacific. That hypothesis is there, and I think that to a certain degree, there is a lot of skepticism among the strategic analysts in India about what kind of a relationship, and will the tempo of the relationship will be sustained under Biden Harris. Let's not forget that one of the reasons why there has been a wind in the sails of India US you know convergence in the last few years under Trump is because of the very antagonistic posture which Trump has taken against China. It suits India a lot, and Trump has been very clear. In fact, he is the first president to make it very clear to Americans that China poses an existentialist threat, not just to the America country per se, but also the liberal order which America has led after the Second World War. And Trump has been very clear about the nature of the threat which China possesses. And towards the later part of his reign, in the last couple of years, Trump has been pushing back against China in a very big way. This has suited India because let's just take one example. India banned TikTok, and everyone said that, oh, this is nothing. TikTok ban will not make any difference whatsoever. But once Trump started putting pressure on TikTok to fall in line or else, then India's decision, Trump Trump made it, the India's decision got bigger bang for the buck, and it acted as the decision by Trump has acted as a force multiplier. So this close synergy between India and US has been noticeable in the last few years, in the last couple of years, definitely under Trump. And I think India became very comfortable with signing foundational agreements with the US, also because of the fact that Trump's adversarial posture against China created the necessary political space in India for the administration to grow closer. This is very important. Inherently, because of the colonial past, Indians are not very they're skeptical of outside powers. The word non-alignment and strategic autonomy has lasted so long as it did, not just because it was a philosophical fancy of the ruling elite, but it had a degree of resonance on the street as well. Inherently, Indians are skeptical of outsider powers because of the colonial history that they possess. That memory is still there. Now, regardless of that, in the last couple of years, we have seen remarkable progress in India-US relationship, and I'll just run you through a couple of them. In terms of agreements, we have the COMCASA, the BECA, the Logistics Exchange Memorandum of Agreement, which is called the LEMOA. We have dialogues, 2 and 2, which is ministerial plus intersessional. We have the quadrilateral arrangement, where we now have Malabar, where Australia has come in. We do more exercises with the US than any other country, and our defense trade with the US is right now booming. All these synergies wouldn't have been possible had it not been for the fact that Trump had taken a sort of Trump did not mask the fact that China is a threat, and it was completely out in the open. So people appreciated that. Even in India, people appreciated that, and it created the political space for Modi government to take the steps that it did. And I would say that in the last couple of months, and certainly since the Galwan tragedy incident, foreign policy decisions in India have been pulled along by the vocal public opinion. It has always been the other way around. Foreign policy has always been the one which has been guided by the babus who are sitting in the bureaucrats and the elites, the strategic analysts. But for the first time since the Galwan clash broke out, I think I certainly remember many occasions, where the antagonism against China was almost forced India's hands to take a tougher posture against China, almost goading India into going into war, as it were. So this is where the last couple of months, India and the US has been very comfortable. Pompeo's frequently come here, and Pompeo's made it very clear that India lies at the heart of Indo-Pacific strategy. So India, from being skeptical towards the US, India went into a position of extreme comfortability, which led to such an agreement. But if Biden comes, and Biden will be completely within his right to dial down the antagonism which Trump administration has towards China. He might not. He might not. Think of China as a friend. He might not. Everyone, even the Democrats, understand that China is not going to change. They are not going to open up. They are certainly not going to turn democratic. They understand that. But do I think that Democrats will have a different approach to China? Yes. And how does that affect India? I think it will create a challenge. It will create a challenge for Biden, because if Biden wants some sort of a reset with China, he will immediately alienate India, because then India will start having trust issues with the US. It might not be able to trust with the Biden-Harris administration, and then we might see the Quad or the Malabar dialing down. We might see the movement which is there right now, the movement getting slowed down. But we will have to see. We'll have to see that. A lot also depends on the appointments, because don't forget, policy is almost always driven by the personnel. If you see somebody like Michelle Flournoy coming up as the defense secretary in charge of Pentagon, that would be a more reassuring sign for India, because she's one of the persons who's very clear-eyed about China. But if you see Susan Rice in that role, someone who's completely misread China and the threat that it poses to the world, then it will be difficult for India. India will be noticing that.
Yeah, isn't so? And it actually kind of boils down to China, right? The China is the Achilles heel, and a lot of what is stored in the future of Indo-American relationships actually depends on how America does the deal with China. And like Trump was, as he said, very clearly anti-China. He was like, I see. So Trump was, and people don't realize that. If anybody who's heard Donald Trump, even when he was not the president, like even in the 90s, when Donald Trump would come on TV and he would comment, he was very anti-China then too. He was very clear about what the Americans are doing with China. They're propping China up is not good for America. And he's been consistent on that. So people don't give Donald Trump enough credit when it comes to his policy consistency on this one. I mean, his views have been consistent from the 90s, 80s. He's always been saying these things. But Biden is not like that. Biden is different. And what scares me is that, let's say Biden, 2 years down the line, kind of physically impaired, mentally impaired. Harris is basically not capable of doing anything. She's just a novice. I mean, you should just look at her record as a politician and you'll understand. And the American establishment takes over, which was in a very weird way. It was Donald Trump who was controlling them. Donald Trump was basically controlling the American establishment. That's definitely not good news for at least India per se. Pakistan might, benefit in a very weird way. And Pakistan, you might see Pakistan, raising the Kashmir ante again. Right now, I mean, Pakistan, even if it did, nobody really listened to Pakistan. They didn't care. I mean, the Americans were like, what, beyond a point, they don't care. So don't you think India should be really worried about that?
See, at the end of the day, we have to work with whatever we have, whoever America chooses. And this administration, the Modi government will work with them and they'll try to. And there's no reason for us to think that the Indian government is not aware of all these threats. They're very much aware of it. And I'm sure the lobbying and the effort by the diplomats based in the US, Indian diplomats based in the US, I'm pretty sure of those things. Um, but as far as skepticism is concerned, I think there is a lot for us to be skeptical about. Biden has boasted that he spent more time with Xi privately, slurping chow meins and logging air miles than any other foreign leader. And Biden has always been pro-China. His anti-China rhetoric is almost entirely a matter of campaigning, political campaigning, and I don't buy into that at all. I think Biden is almost he's one of those people who thinks of China as an opportunity. And one of the things that we completely fail to understand, the Americans will tell you that they opened up to they started aiding China because they thought that aiding China will help China open up and will make China a democratic nation, which is absolute. I mean, I think I'll be politically incorrect and I'll say it's absolute bullshit. They also know that it's not true. The reason why America wanted China to open up, and the reason why America aided China's rise was that they were, it's a capitalist nation and wanted the Chinese market. It's as simple as that. It was in America's interest to penetrate into the Chinese market, and it saw in China an unbelievable opportunity for American businesses to expand. Which is why, and it's all right now to sort of do a post facto justification, but that was the real reason. I see. I do not think that. The American political establishment, the deep state, as it were, it has shed its, or let's just say that the skepticism which Trump brought into the White House, I don't think that this skepticism will outlive him, because Trump has always been an outsider. He's never been a part of the American political establishment, and he never bought into those ideological predispositions. He came and he saw every relationship from a very transactional point of view. This was a benefit of not being part of the establishment like Biden was. So when he looked at China, he saw that China is basically ripping the US off. So he first wanted to do a deal with them, but that deal didn't come off the way he wanted it to. And then I think he also came to understand a lot of the ways in which the Chinese have penetrated American society at every level. One of the reasons is that any democracy is open, and the openness of democracy can be exploited by the authoritarian states and their operatives. So that is something which all democracy must be on guard against. And I think to give him credit, Trump understood that quite well. If you look at the last few months of his administration, the speeches done by Pompeo or Christopher Wray or even Mark Esper, they were very clear about the fact that China is doing a whole of government and whole of society effort to upstage the US as the predominant power, and it requires the US to take a whole of government and whole of society approach to thwart that. This is the level of clear-eyedness which Trump brought into the White House, and I'm not very sure that Biden belongs to that camp. I think Biden is more of an adjustment guy. Biden will try and make deals with China. He'll say that, look, I need China's help in climate, in battling the climate war, and I cannot do without China, and that might give China the space necessary to stave off some of the geopolitical pressure which the Trump administration had brought on it. Where does it leave India? It's a matter of conjecture.
Yeah, and that's what I'm worried about. Just to give you an example of the way China functions, I mean, so people don't realize that the NBA, their second biggest market outside of the United States of America now is China. China basketball is huge in China, huge. So there was this, I think it was a year and a half ago, if I remember correctly, Houston Rockets is the National Basketball Association team, and I don't know who it was, the stores in China was gone. You will never see the greatest basketball player alive today, LeBron James, ever uttering a word about what's happening with the Uyghur Muslims in China. They'll never utter a word. It's as if पता नहीं क्या हो जाता है, जीभ कट जाती है उनकी, कुछ बोलते ही नहीं है. And that's the kind of pressure China exerts even when Trump is in the presidency. So imagine the kind of pressure China exerts when Biden is in the presidency.
Yeah, it could be. It is. I mean, we should not be under any illusions about that. Mesut Ozil, he made the mistake of tweeting in favor of the Uyghur Muslims. He came out with a tweet where he said that what China is doing in the Xinjiang region is not right. And after that, Mesut Ozil's entire career has been almost erased. He's not part of Arsenal anymore, though publicly Arsenal says that it has got nothing to do with the tweet. But the fact is that Premier League is very big in China, and China made no bones about the fact that Arsenal will be completely unwelcome if, in fact, even Premier League will be unwelcome if Mesut Ozil is part of the squad. China is able to do this because it is not a democracy, and the government can sort of crystallize its point of view almost as a sharp tip of the spear. Unlike, let's say, in democracies where many voices sometimes dilute the messages which the government tries to send. There will be the government sending one message, civil society sending another message, media saying another thing. But in China, everything comes together almost like the tip of a spear, and then it can absolutely penetrate you. Also, another thing which we underestimate about China is that many of the things about China we tend to believe that is done from the top by the CCP. It might not be true. Many of the things are also done by the people who are at the very bottom. In fact, the example which you just gave about Houston Rockets, the important thing to understand here is that had such a thing happened in India, and even if the government had given NBA a very strong warning that it should not do such a thing, and otherwise it will be thrown out, unlikely. But even if had the Indian government given it, there will be almost half of Indians who are fans of NBA who would go against the government order and watch it anyway through VPN or by any other means. But in China, the government will basically, before even the government saying it, the moment LeBron James or any other Houston Rockets star will say something like that, most people in China will say, "How dare he?" And so the government policy will be shaped by public opinion rather than the other way around. So it becomes easier for the government to take a step like that. I think this is something which we sometimes fail to understand. The Chinese society is also very unified in its messaging, and the it is reflexive for us to think that an individual wants personal liberty and freedom more than prosperity, and it would always value personal liberty and freedom ahead of everything else. But this is not necessarily true. At least there could be some bit of conjecture when we come to the Chinese people and Chinese civilization. It is possible that there is another explanation, that the people rank prosperity and their facilities towards life much better, and they are more disciplined, and they are more likely to be obedient towards the government if they think that the government is providing them with the resources that they need to get ahead in life. So I think that the way of looking at civilization and all these ideological questions, it needs sometimes a little bit of a pause when you are talking about the Chinese society and culture. It is not the same as it is in the Western concept. In fact, one of the reasons why I'm digressing a little bit, but one of the reasons why you find that the US is making a hash of its elections is the fact that the US doesn't have an election commission. It doesn't have a unified body which dictates the policy terms of how an election should be held, simply because the US is so individualistic and so and the states will not relinquish the control. So they will have their own set of laws. Even the counties will have their own set of laws. And if, as a president, if you want to bring a federal law to make everyone fall in line, people will push back against it.
Not only push back, the country will break.
Yeah. As you saw in masks, something as simple as wearing a mask, it became political. I mean, people didn't want to wear it because they thought that it's curbing their freedom.
Yeah, so as they say, every society has its own raison d'etre, and the raison d'etre of America is freedom and individuality. They're like बंदूकें निकल जाएंगी अगर मुझे बोलोगे कुछ करने को तो, and that's how they
exactly.
are.
But it might not be true in, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, China is not a collective society.
The mistake that we make sometimes is that we try to define one society in terms of another instead of taking it as different societies with different set of rules and their reasonings. Then many of the things which we are puzzled right now, it will fall in place. A government, however authoritarian it is, cannot command an entire set of people if the people do not want to be commanded by the government. I mean, Otherwise, there would have been revolt. I see a lot of essays in Western media about how a revolt is brewing in China. Many of the things, serious scholars, Chinese serious scholars, they don't give too much importance to these columns. They don't think that there is seriously a trouble or a revolt brewing in the Chinese society against the CCP. If anything, the opposite is the case. After the coronavirus, many rating agencies have, even the Western media ones, they've gone there and asked about, and they say that we are happy that Xi Jinping is our president and not Donald Trump. And we are talking about
That's
ordinary Chinese people here.
Yeah, so let me now start delve into the one place which is very important, and I'll actually take a question from somebody who's asked this question to you live. Sriram Prasanna has also asked this question, and I think I can segue it into the last segment before we wrap things up. So Sriram Prasanna has said, did India make a mistake by not joining the RCEP?
I don't think so. I think it was in India's interest to not join it, because India is not a export-driven economy, and joining an RCEP would have meant a de facto free trade agreement with China, because China would have routed its goods entirely into India through the RCEP, and it would have been suicidal for Indian economy. So to answer your question, no, I think it was in India's interest to stay away from RCEP, and RCEP has been it is mostly for economies that are export oriented. Indian economy is not. It is more of an import oriented economy.
Yeah, so now let us look at the last segment. I wanted to keep this for the end, is the trade. Now, under Donald Trump, as you had mentioned, Indo-American trade reached a certain point of comfort where we were slowly, even when it comes to our defense purchases, we were, letting the Americans in some areas while we kept the Russians there too. Now, if, let's say, I'm just saying, if the Biden-Harris presidency tries to, chide us a little too much on Kashmir or CAA and NRC, do you think at a trade level we do have this card now that was built on the basis of a healthy relationship we or whatever we want to call it with Donald Trump? Do you think that could be used as a card in the future?
I think, first of all, we do not need to worry about what the Biden-Harris administration says. Even if it takes a strident stand against internal politics and policies, it will be conveyed to the US that it is not welcome. And I don't think that, and this is something which we have to understand. This is not the Obama era. It is not the post-Cold War era where the US, what shall I say? It is not as if the US can send prescriptions out for the democracies worldwide to follow. It doesn't work that way. First of all, the composite power of the US has lessened dramatically since that, and India as a nation has also risen. There has been some sort of, I wouldn't say parity at all. There's no question of that. And I'm talking about the margins. But India's power and India's influence in the world has risen. So it is right now India, and let's say in 2000, in the early part of the new millennium, maybe a remark from the US president about what it perceives to be, and I'm very clear on this. I do not think that India has violated any or made anything wrong in its policies in Kashmir. I'm very clear on that. But if the US president would have perceived that India has made or whatever India has done is not compatible with its own ideals of democracy, and it would have said something like that, then it is possible that the Indians would have taken it seriously. I don't think that this is the case right now. I think, if anything, the Indians will push back against it, and the US will understand that there is no. At the end of the day, nations work in self-interest. If you see that India it's a very important cog in the US wheel, because when it comes to China, this US is seriously short of options to push back against China. I'm talking about the maritime domain. India is a very, very key ingredient there. So it would be a mistake for them to antagonize India needlessly. As far as trade is concerned, in fact, many analysts are saying that it will probably see some sort of a progress under the Biden administration, because Trump, even though he came to India's aid on geopolitics, on trade, he wasn't as beneficial. In fact, Trump's very peculiar stress on something like the Harley Davidson motorbikes, or very strident sort of note on trade, that would be perhaps moderated a bit by the Biden-Harris administration. We might see an uptick in trade, not defense trade, but also normal the other part of the trade that is concerned. The defense trade is already booming, and I think that will continue to grow. And I do not see India becoming self-reliant in defense production anytime soon. It will still be quite a long distance. Right now, I think India is, and it will continue to import a large degree of its sophisticated weaponry from the US. In trade, I see the Biden-Harris administration actually probably coming to some sort of an agreement with India, and you will probably see some sort of an increase on trade. And on another area where the Biden-Harris administration might be beneficial for India is the immigration policy. Trump's immigration policies were some of the very harshest ones. Here, I think the Biden-Harris will take a more lenient stand. But as far as your question was concerned, whether India can use that as a trade, once again, I think we are putting too much importance on what Biden-Harris administration can say on Kashmir, and even if it does, to what extent it can harm India. I don't see. First of all, if you're taking that as an assumption, if you're suggesting that we need to push back against them by blocking trade, then we are assuming that whatever they say on India's internal politics and policies hold a lot of importance for us to react. I don't think that situation will come about. I don't think that seriously they have that geopolitical or any other sort of influence by which they can actually. And I don't think that they'll make that mistake. I think they will be more circumspect.
Yeah. Also, I think a lot of what depends on is what happens with COVID. I think people are not realizing that the numbers in America are at a certain point now. I'm very clear. I've never been a supporter of lockdowns. I think lockdowns don't work. The science is very clear. Lockdowns just don't work. But with a Biden presidency on top, he might do something crazy like force federal lockdowns.
In fact, yes. I mean, this is I forgot to mention this. I think one of the things which we in India we've been discussing a lot about how a Biden-Harris administration will see India. I think India is the farthest from their mind right now. They have a lot on their plate. COVID is certainly at the very top, and also the fact that the economy is not doing well. And I think they'll have to sort of bring many of the jobs which have been lost due to this pandemic back. And I think their immediate focus will be on the pandemic. And it is interesting. The Biden had chat with I think the Prime Minister of Japan and also Australia, but he didn't call up Modi. And I think this question was put up to the Indian government as well during the foreign external affairs ministry briefing, and it was said that it will happen when it has to happen. I think that both sides understand that signaling on India, positive or negative, is not uppermost at the minds of the Biden administration. They are more interested in transition and, of course, the pandemic. So right now, I think the relationship will be on autopilot. It will go as it was going for a while, and medium to long term, we might see some sort of a change in approach. It will be clear how it approaches China. That will hold a clue for India.
Yes. So just for a passing remark before we wrap things up, what is going to happen to the American media? They had such a great run for 4 years. I mean, Orange Man bad. I mean, somebody watching it live, they just made a comment that CNN compares Trump to Hitler, in a very hyperbolic manner. But do you think the media houses will go bankrupt now that Orange Man is gone?
I think I'd say that the Orange Man is not going anywhere. He'll be around. And there are a couple of websites, in fact, more than a couple of websites in the US media space who make their bread and butter by scanning what Trump said or didn't say. So those people, they are probably dreading Trump's going away from the scene because their businesses will be collapsing. But I think Trump is not going away anytime soon. I think he'll be on the national radar. He has his way of staying in the news. He'll be there. And for the media, which had whipped itself up into a frenzy over Trump and his team and how he used to run the government, they will have a hard time finding the ratings. I think it'll be. I don't know. Maybe they are. I don't see them going after the Biden government at all. In fact, if anything, if we see how they're trying to protect the Biden government, Biden basically hid in his basement without having to face any of the tough questions that Trump faced. Obviously Trump is the president and he will be facing questions. But even then, if you're challenging for the president's job, you better tell us what your policies are and how do you plan. None of these questions were asked of him. And the way the controversy over Hunter Biden was buried under the carpet, it was ridiculous. It
Yeah.
probably backfired. It probably backfired because many people, had it been out in the open for people to judge, they would have probably said that no, it's nothing. It's just a trumped up story. But the moment you start, and the social media, I forgot to mention the big tech, the way they have been aiding the Biden government by suppressing the whatever Trump used to say and stuff like that. It'll be interesting to see what they does as well. The big tech and its holdover media is also a very important thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was just this one man against the whole bloody establishment in that country. It's like Hollywood, the big tech, media. It's just everybody, just that orange man bad, and it was, to be very honest, somebody like I'll be very open. Like I'm a libertarian, so I would, if I was in America, I would be voting for Joe Jorgensen. But well, you can say I'm wasting my vote. Not that I don't know about that, but I've never been an admirer of Trump. But and it's primarily because of Trump's personality. But yeah, Trump could be an interesting opposition guy. And imagine if he runs again in 2024, that would be hilarious.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And another things that ultimately we have to understand is that Trump has always said that, and this was the key part of his campaign, that the elites who are there in charge of the Washington D.C., the swamp as it were, they despise you and they do not have any concern for you at all. They're only interested in their own in lining their own pockets and extending their own influence. And the way the campaign has unfolded and the way Trump has been vilified, it would seem that the very fact that he had the very charges that he had leveled against the elites, they have vindicated him in every way. And this is something I think is a victory for Trump, because uh, Trump has been defeated as a US president, but as a political force, he's still there. His appointments in the US Supreme Court will be there. It right now enjoys a conservative majority unless the Democrats pack the court. And the most important thing is that Trump has made a viable political coalition out of the ordinary working class Americans who are now against the elites. The elites have won this battle by hook or by crook. They've won it, but the working class Americans who are solidly in Trump's corner, they have not given up. And I don't think that this is a battle which has been won comprehensively. Trump is defeated, but the ideas that he stood for has not been defeated.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a perfect way to wrap things up for today, that Trump might be defeated, but Trumpism is still alive. And Trumpism is something that is far more deeper than people realized initially. So Sreemoy, once again, thanks a lot for coming on the podcast. It was an absolute pleasure to chat with you, and I look forward to many more conversations.
Thank you so much. It'll be a pleasure. Thank you.
All right, guys, time to wrap things up. If you like what I'm doing over here, please subscribe to the podcast, like this video, leave your comments. If you're an audio only listener, you can do the same over there. I've left Sreemoy's bio in the description. You can definitely go and check out all his articles in firstpost.com, or maybe you can go up at, I think it's called Muckrack or Muckracker or something, where you can get read everything that Sreemoy has written. If you like what I'm doing over here, you can join the YouTube membership program or the Patreon subscription. And also wish you all a very happy Diwali. And I wanted to let you guys know that today, finally, being Diwali, I have launched a merchandise store. So if you go on www.kushalmehra.com/shop, you can actually buy the merch now. And on that note, I'll leave you guys for the day. Have a great Diwali. If you can burst crackers, please do. And see you next time. Namaste. Take care. Goodbye.
Thank you. Thank you.